basically it's like when someone just you start to get to know somebody and like within 3 or 4 times of seeing them, they kind of like unload like the shit that happened in their life in a way.
Mm.
It's like I've been through this, I've been through that. Um, and I've even had moments in getting to know people in a romantic way, going on dates, to where I've like caught myself wanting to do that. It's like, oh, like this person needs to know like the absolute like core and hurt of my story right now for some reason because it seems like things are getting serious or something. And so I think I've had that come up and it's good for me to hold back because I think when I do that and I've heard of other people doing that too, I feel like it's almost like this desire to jump in to something and to have that control of the next step of like, okay, if you want to get to know me, here's like what's really going on. And I think it's good for me to hold back in those situations. And obviously, like people should judge this on their own too. But I think it could be negative because when I have done that and it's been too soon, I do feel guilty about it afterward. And I get this kind of fear of like, oh shit, like now they know, like, are they gonna like me?
Yeah. Well, like first, just to like kind of encompass all of that, with that and this idea of trauma dumping, it could also be seen as an expression of vulnerability that you're like, oh, hey, like if I see this getting a bit more serious, like, and we want to have that connection, that trust, that vulnerability, let me tell you part of my history, part of my experience of what has made me and evolved me into who I am today. And that could be in connection to that. For some people that do experience anxiety, it could also be like sometimes we like word vomit that you just kind of like start sharing and you're like, I didn't mean to share all that. So that's truly dependent on the person as well. But yeah, with that vulnerability part, it's could be a person trying to display that they're like, I feel comfortable with you. I want to share this with you. It could also be a connection of the societal norms of dating that's like, I feel like if we're going to do this, you need to know my whole story so that way you can decide now if you're in it for the long term. That it's like, you need to have all this information before we continue further.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is important to feel vulnerable, and that is an indication of like the protection and safety thing. Like, can I be myself and it be okay with this person? But at the same time, I think what I used to be guilty of with it being like a negative thing, not necessarily
Hmm.
like being vulnerable, but like trauma dumping, just like too much, too quick.
Hmm.
I think it is a jump to the next step in a way. And I think one of the most fun parts about dating is almost like that mystery and almost that beginning phase of like, oh my gosh, like who is this person and why are they so wonderful? I guess. And
Yeah.
so over time and getting to know somebody and having parts of their story revealed slowly, I think it'd be really exciting. And I feel like not many people take it slow nowadays. And I feel like maybe this is from like 90s sitcoms or just like the culture or like expectation nowadays, I feel like. But what I've heard
Hmm.
is kind of like you sleep with somebody like on a third date. Like that's almost like a rule of thumb for some reason.
Oh my, yep, that
Um,
was in a lot of sitcoms that they're like, oh, third date, like what
yeah.
happened? Like, did it go through? Like, did you go all the way? And you're like, nowadays we look at it and we're like, you don't have to do that by the third date. It could be like date 30 if you want, or
Yeah.
never. Like, totally up to you.
Or never, yeah.
Like, yeah,
I think people also underestimate the emotional attachment that comes with sex too.
no, absolutely. I mean, that could be it's because I mean, look at like how it's portrayed in media or how society kind of discusses it. It's something that is very much brought up in the dating world, but then you have like the idea of physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, just like all these different things, romance, another one that like they all just get kind of lumped together. When I mean, it's so interesting to pick it apart and look at how each is contributing to your relationship or just your perspectives on relationships in general. What you value in when what you look for in a partner, what you look for in a relationship that's not even specifically toward another person. It's just like I always find it so fascinating just being able to look at those different components and see like it doesn't all have to be physical intimacy. There's people that like that emotional connection that ties into vulnerability, or just like the idea of like just truly feeling this kind of other connection with someone, that it's not physical, but you just like you can look at each other and know like there's this electricity or this energy that you feel that's like pulling you closer together, that you're like, I found someone that gets it.